Good evening and welcome to Smart Entrepreneurship Decoded on Transcontinental Times. We are into week 26. Time really flashes by, and tonight I have another Bangalorean. They say it's very difficult to find Bangaloreans in Bangalore or even Kannadigas in Bangalore. After all, they make up less than a quarter of the population. It's a privilege that in the last few weeks we found a few. And I have another one tonight. He's joining us from the campus of PES University, which is a fantastic university. And he's an early stage investor as well as having spent a lot of time in corporate, has got rich background experience. He runs a company called TurboStart, and I present to you Chetan Srinali. Welcome, Chetan.
Thanks, Nalin. Hi, everyone.
So, nobody gets up in the morning and thinks they are going to be an investor, or nobody goes to college thinking one day I'm going to be an investor. How did you become an investor? Talk us through that story.
Good question, Nalin. Thanks for asking this tough question. I became an investor accidentally. So I never wanted to be in the. See, I belong to a very conservative family, grew up in a small town called Shivamogga, right? Came to Bangalore in 97. My thing was to kind of get a job in Bangalore and kind of get settled in life. Right? And spent about a decade in financial services industry. That's where I used to manage large funds for large corporates which were running into hundreds of crores to thousands of crores. Right? Then spent about 6-7 years in a large healthcare organization. Right? So that's where I saw a kind of gap. Especially by nature, we don't have this entrepreneurial DNA in us, right? We either kind of get into education to get a good job or, and things like that. So that's where, I decided to kind of give my life to, startup, where, as you rightly said, I worked in corporate for about 15 plus years, right? And then, typically, people call it a kind of mid-age crisis or midlife crisis kind of a thing, right? But for me, when I told my wife that I'm becoming an entrepreneur and for me life begins at 40, she said, have you gone mad? I think you still have an outstanding of 40 lakhs of your home loan which you have not repaid, and you're talking of becoming an entrepreneur at the age of 40. And that's how it all started. And fortunately, I saw the exit in one of the first startups where I didn't co-found it, but I worked as a core team member. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And then I decided to be in this. I just wanted to kind of give back to the society, and that made me an early stage investor. Of course, I had a lot of other choice. Probably I could have given money to one of these large portfolio management companies to manage this portfolio and things like that. But I decided to be an entrepreneur because I know the pain of what entrepreneurs go through and things like that. So hope I've answered your question, Nalin.
Absolutely. So when in the you also so the TurboStart, the company you run, is it
Just
a
a
network?
correction. In fact, TurboStart was started by a gentleman called Ganesh Raju, who used to be one
Okay.
of the senior partners with PwC. And of course, now we have an executive chairman called Venkat Raju, who's a very well-respected name in the startup ecosystem. Venkat is an investor with 70 plus startups. So he has seen a lot of exits in the US. Plus in India as well. In fact, he used to run one of the first accelerators in India, which got acquired by Techstars. That's how I became a part of TurboStart for the fund too. So just a
Okay.
correction, since I'm a part of the
Sure,
core
sure.
team, but
Absolutely.
Ganesh is the founder and Venkat is our executive chairman now.
Okay. So is
Right.
it a fund or is it a network of investors?
See, it's neither a fund nor a network of investors. So we have a very different modus operandi, right? So
Hmm.
technically, we don't come under the purview of regulation, which is SEBI.
Okay.
When you pool even money from a network of angels, so technically it becomes a fund. So we are not a fund; we are a program, right? And we don't want to kind of position ourselves as an accelerator or an incubator, because most of these things, even if you look at, the big daddies of acceleration or incubation like Y Combinator or TechStars or some of these platforms like Venture Catalyst or Indian Angel Network and things like that. So eventually, everybody is either moving to an incubation kind of a program, or they start an alternative investment fund. So which technically comes under SEBI, where you have either category one or category two kind of a thing. In Turbo Start, one of the key values which we bring to the table, we work with these startups very closely, right? We have no hang-ups in terms of whether it's a single founder kind of a company. We don't really look at the pedigree of the founders. We technically act as a co-founder. We technically
Okay.
become their soft co-founder, and we work with these companies for a much longer period. And even when it comes to our network of investors, right? So it's a very small group of strategic investors. We are not like I'm raising, say, the first round, the fund one, where we have invested in about 18 companies. We have a very limited set of investors. It's not like a large network of angel investors. So we have, fortunately, Ganesh was heading family business vertical with PwC, and prior to that, he was leading the M&A practice. So he's very well connected with the CXO community. And as I spoke about Venkat, who's an investor with 70 plus startups, and he's also an IC of many of these funds in funds across the globe. So they had those required expertise and the connects. So we brought in certain like-minded people who became strategic investors, and it's not just we give money, right? We also work with them very closely in terms of product, technology, growth, both in terms of digital marketing as
So,
well as
so it's a
sales.
very small select group of investors. You work with the
Correct.
co-founder virtually as
Correct.
an embedded team and help
Correct.
them to
Absolutely.
achieve scale or next round or whatever.
Absolutely, absolutely, Nalin. And we follow a
So,
competition model wherein when we opened our first cohort, we had received little over 1,000 applications, and for the second cohort, we had received 1,500 plus kind of applications, out of which we have selected these 18 companies, and we have few of them have been incubated at TurboStart now.
so what is the philosophy? How do you select? What is the philosophy behind these 18? What were you looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question again, Nalin. See, we are pretty much a sector agnostic program. We are not really focused on deep tech or a sector specific kind of a fund. We are very sector agnostic. Of course, we looked at predominantly our focus or philosophy has been towards B2B startups,
Okay.
right? Technology enabled B2B startups. So that's where we could bring in a lot of value to the table, right? Say, for
Are you
example, there is a
geography
very,
specific or all India?
no, we are a PAMN. We have companies across, we have our portfolios across India. In fact, even in, one of them is in a tier two city as well. We are pretty much spread across India. We have some of our portfolios in Delhi, NCR, Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore. We are pretty much spread across. It so happened that the first cohort, many of the companies which where we invested were edtech companies, and and we never expected COVID, right? Because our first program was just before COVID when we launched our fund one, and so we also pivoted, and we had to take a lot of strategic steps during COVID. So, but,
Okay.
our philosophy is B2B, and we invest in very early stage to pre-series A kind of a thing. The ticket size also, it varies. So normally we invest around couple of crores, but there have been instances where we have invested more in a few of the interesting startups as
Okay.
well, and we've been supporting them throughout the journey of their
Your
investment.
typical deals are straight equity or convertible debt. What kind of deals do you all do?
I don't know. We get into a straight equity deal. We don't even believe in these preferential, CCPS kind of a model or convertible kind of a note. Since we work with these very early stage, and we believe that even there are certain equities which are even milestone. Say, for example, if the startup says I would want to achieve this, say 10x revenue in say next 3 years. So probably we might say that, with our presence, you might be able to reach that goal in 1.5 years time, or probably in 1.5 years you may be able to do the 20x. So once you reach the 20x, you give us additional equity of say 5% or something on that sort. So
So
our
what is
modus
a
operandi has been straight equity.
so what is a typical exit for an early stage investor like you? Is it in the next round? Is it do you hold
It,
on?
it, it really depends. So basically, going back to your previous question on, the investment philosophy, right? We look at, a short to medium term kind of an exit, right? Where ideally we would love to exit either during Series A or Series B kind of a thing. But since I was talking about one of the flagship portfolios of ours, a company called Ken 42, which is a unicorn in making now. So definitely, we would be participating even in the further rounds, and we would definitely like to stay invested. In fact, Ganesh is the CEO of that company, who's the founder of TurboStart. So imagine the level of commitment, and they're doing really well. So definitely, we would like to stay invested in such companies. And see, when out of these 18, there may be one or two low touch companies where founders are very strong, and they may not require our support for future rounds and things like that. There, with a decent valuation, we might decide to exit during Series A or Series B kind of a thing. Hope that answered
So
your
a
question.
medium term exit time frame looks like what? 3 years, 5 years, 7 years?
Yeah,
What does it
three
look like?
three to 5 years is ideal. So even we all to tell our investors also, right? Since we work with very few strategic investors who are CXOs or from reputed family offices and things like that. Typically, when you invest in a normal fund, right? Say probably, or when you run a fund, you technically make money when you start your round. I mean, fund 5 or fund 6. So the gestation can be anywhere between 12 to 15 years when you invest in large VC funds. So this is one of the values, which we bring to the table as an early investor. So technically,
So
the horizon can be 3 to 5 years.
yeah. So Chetan, you are working you've seen the corporate side, you've seen the financing side from corporate side. You're seeing startups of all kinds from the investor view as well as an entrepreneur view when you work with them.
Right.
And very often we have so many books and mentors who tell you what not to do, which I believe is very easy to say to anybody in any walk of life. Let's talk about what to do. So when you work with all these entrepreneurs and you see some who are doing better than others, and if you remove the luck, fluke, chance element of it, what is it that successful or entrepreneurs do better? What are the one or two traits that you see in them that they do, which others don't?
Uh, One of the traits, Nalin, I would think is definitely, the passion, right? How passionate they are. It's not just about, how deep is their technology expertise or, their intellectual bandwidth. I think, if I were to put it in two words, I look at, probably even rather three words: passion, focus, and dedication. A lot of people have a tendency to kind of get carried away when they see other opportunities, and they kind of try to pivot to other options rather than focusing on the core business, right? And we being a b2b focused, predominantly b2b focused, because of course we have a couple of portfolios which are in the b2c domain. B2B also, when they come to us, and when they present to us, probably, when they see a carrot with some additional revenue to their stream, they would rather try to focus on those things. So that's where we want them to be focused on the core area where we would have got convinced, so that other idea may not be a very strategic pivot for them. So they may see that immediate revenue, but there are chances that it may be a case of penny wise and pound foolish. So sometimes they miss the big picture. So that's one of the reasons, focus is of utmost importance. One has to be very, very focused, right? And our bets has always been on the person, not on the tech or the business which they are in. So passion, focus, and
So,
dedication are the three things.
so ultimately, you back the person at an early stage, isn't it?
Absolutely, the bets have always been on the person. See, these days, you and me know that, or most of us know that People are good at presentation. There are experts who make pitch decks for them. There are experts who give them projections and everything, right? So the bet has always been on. So this is something which I learned from both Draper Junior and Draper Senior, where I had an opportunity to work with a gentleman called Mr. Kiran Nadkarni, who is considered to be the father of venture capital in India. So I had the privilege of working with him, and we had done some co-investments together as well. So I used to take a lot of input from him because he has worked both in the Valley as well as in India. Of course, he's also an IC of a lot of large private equity firms now.
Do you, for an early stage startup, let me be more specific, somebody without revenue, just a prototype, etc., do you sometimes feel shocked or surprised or find it ironical that they come with these elaborate worksheets showing valuation with 7 years forward commentary?
Absolutely, absolutely. And for me, this happens day in day out, Nalin. In fact, one of the guys, who had done a great work in terms of pitch deck, all the numbers. In fact, he had even done some, peer work kind of, group surveys. He had the relevant feedback from people, but I kept on rejecting his idea based on my experience, and I have seen, one success, one mediocre scenario, and one utter failure in my startup journey before I became an investor. So many a times, experience matters a lot, and normally, I'm not a person who kind of gets carried away by these numbers and things like that. Having said that, there are certainly good exceptions, Nalin. Not
True, true.
everything, you not be able to kind of cherry pick the right idea, or deal flow has been a challenge for many of us in the industry, because not everybody is like a brand like
So,
Sequoia, where they can invest in 500 odd startups in a year and things like that. Because
so for an early
especially the
early
smaller
stage
firms, yeah.
startup without revenue but a prototype and all that, how many years data forward will you have them show you? Just with assumptions and some kind of projection. Is it one, three, five? What is it that you look
I
at?
think that, see, I would go with anywhere between 3 to 5 years kind of a thing, because see, 1 year may be too shorter period, because you're not very
Mhm.
sure, because they are in the very early stage. They may, or it's
Mhm.
a hit or miss, right? So there is
Yeah.
no gray area in this case. Either it will be white or black. So the visibility, they should have a visibility for at least 3 to 5 years for
Okay.
a very early stage POC kind of a thing.
Okay. Let's shift focus to the investor side. So
Sure.
similarly, on the investor side, you would have seen successful investors, failed investors, investors who think like money lenders, investors with all kinds of philosophies. In your experience, what is a what are the things that professional investors do that others don't, that makes them have a better success rate than others?
Okay, I would answer your question in two parts, Nalin.
Sure.
See, there are two types of professional investors. So, one, an active professional investor, and a passive professional investor, right? A passive professional investor would just give money and forget about it, because he's so convinced that he's sold on the idea, he's sold on the startup, he's sold on the people, right? And he's very sure that this idea is going to click. And a professional investor could be somebody like I spoke about, Venkat Raju, right? So he's a professional, and I mean, investor. He understands this domain very, very, and so that kind of investors are very, very rare to find. Maybe you would might find about less than 5% of the overall investment community, right? And when it comes to active investors, right, it could be some of those investors who have seen large exits in the recent past, or it could be CXOs of large companies, or even family offices. A lot of these large family offices look at investing in digital companies, where they would want to play an active role. Families might want to put the second generation as an employee in that particular startup, or the CXO may want to be a board advisor, or a strategic advisor to that particular startup. So there are different kinds of investors, active investors, where they would want to have an active role with these startups. And when it comes to cherry picking, right, going back to your my second part of the answer to your question, it's very difficult to identify, which is a good startup and things like that. It's always, you'll have to spread the risk. A good investor is one where, if he has an investable surplus of say 10 crores, instead of investing in, one of particular two particular startups, if he spreads his risk across, say 20 startups in different domains, so I would call him a professional investor than somebody investing this 2 crores into a particular startup or one or two startups kind of thing, because the success rate with many of the VCs is very, very less. Touchwood, for us, there's been absolutely no mortality in last couple of years. Touchwood, all the companies are doing well, and about 4 to 5 companies are already ready for Series A kind of a funding. So this is the
That's
scenario.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So as you constantly get bombarded by people pitching you ideas, etc. In the last, let's call it early stage post pandemic, in the
Mhm.
last 3 4 months, what are the kinds of industries you're seeing coming forward?
Uh, See, one of the clear leaders or the industry which is in the pole position is education technology, right? We have seen a lot of disruption, especially during COVID. Even now, people are talking about hybrid kind of a classroom, which is a combination of both online plus offline, right? Even supply chain and logistics, right? So digital overall, I think in fact, COVID has been a blessing in disguise for many of our portfolio companies, because we never expected this pandemic to hit us, and where we had to take a lot of calls. In fact, one of my friends who runs a very interesting, it's not a startup exactly, a company called Move and Sing. So they were the
Mhm.
global leaders in employee transportation business, both in terms of technology platform as well as an end-to-end kind of a full stack. That's what they call it. So they pivoted to a hybrid workplace model. So now they've rebranded Move and Sync into Work and Sync. So if I were to kind of choose three industries, of course, EdTech, right? And we are seeing a lot of action happening in legal tech oblique rec tech, right? In fact, one of our companies which is into digitization of this stamp duty, and they've kind of otherwise, especially when you go to a public sector bank, especially if you're applying a loan like housing loan, it's such a very painful process. So they have disrupted that particular market. So legal tech and rec tech, and last but not the least, health tech. We've been seeing a lot of action happening in healthcare sector per se. It could be in terms of medical devices, the role of IoT in terms of remote monitoring or telemedicine. Definitely a lot of action happening, and thanks to COVID, there are different ways to test even COVID through computer vision, image processing, and things like that. So these are the top three sectors, and trust me, Nalin, I get to see at least 20 business plans on a daily basis, through LinkedIn or through any of the professional networks, and people like you who run such programs for global audience. So definitely, a lot of people do reach out to us with their business plan and things like that. So it becomes literally difficult for me to kind of go through, and many a times I feel so bad that I'll not be able to reply to these guys or give some kind of a guidance. I would definitely revert to them, but many cases will not be able to send even a regret mail kind of a thing, saying that this may
Yeah.
work or this may not work. That's the
It's
unfortunate part
interesting
of
you
it.
said edtech. I run an edtech company myself in Indonesia. I also, and the first unicorn there is similar to the first unicorn in India. In
Sure.
your view, do you consider giving tuitions with video as edtech?
I mean, definitely, right? It forms a part of one of the subsets of education technology, which is learning management system, or
Mhm.
so-called LMS. In fact, one of the companies started by again one of the renowned early stage investors, Ganesh. He started Tutor Vista, which got acquired by Pearson. So he again
Mhm.
started online. It was just, I think, those days it was more of Skype was, I think, only medium then, because there was no Zoom,
Okay.
there was no, yeah, that's how it started. And uh, see, it's not just about what else you can bring to the table, right? Along with video as an enabler, what else you could bring to the table. So there are a lot of
Fair enough.
other value addition. Definitely, I would consider
Fair,
that as an edtech initiative. May not
fair enough.
form a part of the whole ecosystem, but definitely yes, Nalin.
So we are coming to the end of our time. So I will. My final question to you is campus related because you're sitting on a campus,
Right.
and recently I met a company from that campus in Delhi, and they are in the space sector, and I was very impressed with them.
Got it.
So when you meet students on the campus
Right.
today, I mean, they are all on adrenaline, right?
Correct.
And for them, the world has just become an oyster. Everything is just hunky dory. What
Right.
advice do you give them? Because very often they think I start and I get funded. So what advice do you give them that how to approach entrepreneurship?
Got it. Maybe I'll just take a step back, Nalin.
Sure, please do.
See, here, unlike in the US or many of the European countries, there is a clear disconnect between corporate and campuses. Right? For corporate, campus relation is mainly to get talent, right? And
Yes.
they don't really encourage. Most of the colleges don't really encourage entrepreneurship per se. But I'm also an alumnus of PS, IT, and I get involved in a lot of these activities where I was a judge for jury for one of the hackathons which happened in the recent past. So my thing is, look at solving some real problems, because even here at PS, we encourage people right from first semester to get into this entrepreneurship kind of. In fact, there are so many people in third sem, fifth sem who are running their own startups at Pesu Labs, which is run by a gentleman called Suresh Narasimha. He also owns a fund called Co-Create Ventures. So I mean, both Suresh and I, we advise these guys that you address some real problem. Don't look at any of the success stories like what Byju's is doing now or what other unicorn is doing. Don't try to copy the thing, but look at solving some real problems, because our generation is different and millennials are different. Right, so they may see our problems as not as a problem at all for them, right? So, and they have different challenges now, in the current scenario due to pandemic or for different reasons. So I would suggest you look at solving some real problems. Don't worry about funding and things like that. So if you are able to kind of solve a good problem through technology or a good idea, I think you're definitely going to succeed.
That's very sound advice. And similar to what I say, find a large enough problem to solve for that people will pay for the solution. There are a lot
Absolutely.
of problems, a lot of big problems where people are not willing to pay for the solution. So, Chetan,
Absolutely.
it has been an absolute delight to have you on the show. Your insights were fantastic. The
My
work you are
pleasure,
doing,
Nalin, and thanks for
the
the
things you said
opportunity.
about were very practical and very real because you're so close to the situation. Thank you very much, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Great to be a part of this event, Nalin. Thanks for the opportunity again. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.